So in this paper, I will analyze photographs capturing the devastation wrought by industrial and agricultural systems, resource depletion, and environmental degradation in the 21st century. The analysis opens the space for introducing what Stacy Alaimo has called the ethics of exposure. This ethics foregrounds material susceptibility and vulnerability of exposed bodies, bringing attention to the lived experiences within the Anthropocene period, during which human activities have become a geomorphological and geological force, which are, according to Steffen and others, pushing the Earth into planetary terra incognita. But as Alaimo emphasizes, there's no nature that we just act upon. Instead, it's also acting back upon us, as we are always already a part of the dynamics of the world upon which we act. And many different groups of people, such as climate refugees and myriad of animals, are being harmed by the Anthropocene. In the paper, I will foreground the relationship between animal bodies and agricultural environments or ruined ecosystems as depicted through the lenses of the 6 award-winning photojournalists. It is not only the exposed animal bodies, that is, bodies impacted by the climate crisis and ecological destruction, confined, depleted, or genetically modified animal bodies that are of interest, but also the environments in which these bodies are photographed. These environments do not merely provide backdrops, but also affect animal bodies, whose vulnerability, when exposed, is demonstrated through an exploration of the various sites of exposure in the analyzed photographs. The photographs suggest the material interconnections between specific bodies and specific places. Places that could be called, according to Schiltz, liminal zones of otherness, bringing attention to animals' corporeal connection to the global economic, industrial, and environmental systems. We can place the analyzed photographs within the genre of photojournalism, which has built up a sense of the photograph's role as bearing witness and being a reliable document or recording of reality. In this case, the photograph carries what Newton has called the burden of truth. The analyzed photographs belong to the realm of photographs that cannot possibly be posed and enable using Susan Sontag's phrase regarding the pain of others. When the other is the animal, the photographer Jo-Anne McArthur talks of a special subgenre which she calls animal photojournalism. She defines it as an emergent genre of photography that captures, memorializes, and exposes the experiences of animals who live among us, but who we fail to see. These are, she continues, particularly those historically underrepresented animals, but with whom we, in fact, have very close contact. The animals we eat and wear, the animals used in research, and the animals we use for entertainment, work, and in religious practice. Animal photojournalism often takes the form of an in-depth reportage or photo essay. As with conflict photographers, animal photojournalists put themselves at physical and psychological risk to document a practice or an event. Because animals used by humans are often caged and concealed, animal photojournalists may need to gain access to a place of animal exploitation in secret. As the photographer Konrad Luzinski states, civil disobedience has proved to be an important mechanism for every social movement fighting injustice. It is necessary if we want to change the views of society and their justification for exploiting animals. I personally prefer undercover work, infiltrating the industry to expose the relations, procedures, and other acts that take place in these environments. For today's presentation, I selected 6 photographs that depict various sites of exposure of animal bodies, that is, animal bodies' experience of climate change, environment pollution, and the animal-industrial complex, and to illustrate how speciesism can materialize across bodies and places. My analysis focuses on actual animal bodies as they are transformed by their encounters with places, substances, and forces. I explain the relations between animal bodies and their environments using the theoretical concept of transcorporeality by Stacy Alaimo. Alaimo develops the concept of transcorporeality by drawing upon new materialist theories of material agency. That is, they refuse the notion of matter as passive or inert and emphasize the interconnections, interchanges, and transits between bodies and non-human natures. Nature, according to Alaimo, quote, is always as close as one's own skin, perhaps even closer, unquote. Agency is therefore not conceived as the property of a concrete, isolated entity, but is distributed and moves across the networks into which these entities are embedded. Alaimo argues for a conception of transcorporeality that traces the material interchanges across human and animal bodies and the wider material world. Transcorporeality denies that bodies, human and animal, are a stable entity, discrete in time and space. Rather, as Alaimo argues, they are, quote, caught up in and transformed by myriad, often unpredictable material agencies, unquote. The concept of transcorporeality therefore suggests that bodies are intertwined with the dynamic material world which crosses through them, transforms them, and is transformed by them. All of the 6 analyzed photographs manifest, according to Susan Sontag, the dual powers of photography: to generate documents and to create works of visual art. Most of them are included in the book Hidden: Animals in the Anthropocene, published in 2020 and co-edited by Jo-Anne McArthur and Keith Wilson. Hidden is an unflinching book of photographs documenting our human-animal relations around the globe, as depicted through the lenses of 40 award-winning photojournalists. Photography became a tool for them to get involved in the fight for animal rights. Their work as animal photojournalists is perhaps best represented by the following quote by Konrad Luzinski. Quote, "When I take photos, I try to think of images as open wounds that can't be ignored. They should communicate pain," unquote. So let's take a look at the photographs now. The author of the first photograph is Jo-Anne McArthur. She's been documenting the lives of animals for 2 decades. She has traveled to over 60 countries to photograph human-animal relations for her non-profit photo agency, We Animals. She has received several awards, including the Global Peace Photo Award. The presented photograph captures collecting eggs from caged hens in an industrial farm. It depicts intensively confined egg-laying chickens in battery cages, small wire enclosures stacked several tiers high and extending down long row in a windowless shed. They're placed as many birds as they can fit into these tiny cages, one on top of the other, with the fecal matter of the birds on top falling on those below. But it is not the individual bodies that are of interest here, but rather the environment. In this photograph, McArthur depicts the environment in which animals blend into their living spaces, underscoring that farm animals' places are never merely a background. That is, their bodies are inseparable from the environment. The most salient figure in the photograph, which occupies a central place in the composition, is the worker collecting eggs. She is wearing a face covering to avoid inhaling the toxic dust and ammonia in the air. But the birds are left exposed to inhale all these substances, which plays a crucial role in increased disease susceptibility. Compared to the first photograph, the second photograph depicts individualized chicken. The photograph portrays just 6 weeks old broiler chicken. This chicken has already put on too much weight to be able to stand. The individualization of the chicken is realized through his salience in the image, with other chickens being out of focus. The photograph portrays how industrialized agriculture systems profoundly alter animal bodies. The photograph is an example of transcorporeal space, where the capitalist system generates environments that infiltrate animal bodies. Chickens are treated not as conscious beings, but as matter to be shaped according to the needs of the capitalist system. Metabolic demands of intensive production, such as accelerated growth rates, coupled with the psychological physiological stress associated with both confinement and the various physical modifications, leave animals extremely prone to disease. The next photograph captures the bloody aftermath of a duck slaughter for the market. The photograph suggests violence executed in duck flesh. Animals and the agents of killing are absent from the photograph, but we can read the photograph through indexical signs, that is, duck feathers falling to the floor and grains of corn index the presence of the ducks, and a large surface totally covered with blood index their slaughter. Since wet markets are places where animals might be slaughtered, there are also places where human bodies collide with animal flesh and blood. The next 3 photographs portray places where the animal's embodiment meets water. Water constitutes one of the so-called Anthropocene's most urgent, visceral, and ethically fraught sides of political praxis and theoretical inquiry. Our reshaping of this planet is occurring not least through the choreography and rematerialization of its waters. Rivers that once ran fast are now exhausted before they reach the sea. Dams, canals, and diversions undermined many vital waterways. Large-scale extraction pollutes more water volume sites than the quantity of energy resources removed from the earth. Oceans are acidifying, and the composition of life they sustain seems to be shifting at breakneck speed. But, as Astrida Neymanis emphasizes, water is not simply something out there, environment, resource, commodity, backdrop, but also the stuff of human and non-human bodies, and never separate from our own materiality. Anthropocene waters, therefore, dams other aspects of water imaginary, that is, water's transcorporeality. A photograph of an oil-soaked pelican is a particularly vivid example of transcorporeal space. The fact that the oil spill affects the pelican's body highlights the substantial interconnections between the pelican and the environment. The pelican's vulnerable body is not separable from the ocean. It is vulnerable to its substances and flows. The photograph, which was shot after the crude oil spilling into the Gulf of Mexico in 2010, focuses on the pelican's body, as it is altered by its encounters with oil. It depicts the gravity of the pelican's condition. Shouldering the weight of heavy oil, brown pelican struggles in the sludgy surf. Oil-soaked feathers have a particularly devastating effect on birds. Because feathers help them maintain a healthy body temperature, birds cannot thermoregulate. It means they cannot keep their own body temperature steady when the outside temperature changes. The chemical byproducts of oil got into the tissue of birds, in their blood, livers, and feathers. This oil intrusion even had cascading effects on how birds' DNA functioned. Oil spills have a devastating impact on life within coastal and marine ecosystems. Wildlife and habitats suffer from the adverse effects of spills for many years after the oil is released into the environment. This photograph suggests that the body of the pelican, the ocean, and the oil are simultaneously material and social. The oil spill into the Gulf of Mexico cannot be separated from social and economic relations of power that enable industrialization. Chris Jordan's stunning photograph, Midway Message from the Gyre, featured decomposing marine birds. The remnants of their carcasses revealing the pieces of plastic they have ingested. Baby albatrosses are fed little quantities of plastic by their parents, who mistake the floating trash for food as they forage over the vast polluted Pacific Ocean. These surreal photographs display the painful contrast between the muted browns and grays of the decomposing bodies that are already becoming part of nature again, against the eerie, cheery, and super colorful bits of plastic, predominantly bottle caps. The banal but persistent detritus of consumerism. Ironically, the birds, like good environmentalists, will reuse these bits of plastic. The last photograph captures surviving pigs wading through floodwaters along a stretch of highway to escaping a factory farm. The photograph was shot in September of 2018 after Hurricane Florence was approaching the coast of North Carolina. North Carolina farms raise over 800 million chickens and 9 million pigs each year. Most of these animals are kept in long, rectangular sheds designed to house hundreds of animals, or, in the case of chicken, tens of thousands in a single structure. For millions of animals trapped inside, there would be no evacuation, no supplies left behind, no official rescue to come. The photograph represents bodies that are the most vulnerable to climate disturbances. They have no means to protect themselves from such harm. And ironically, the photograph suggests that their escape may well be life-threatening, that might be no person to save them, that no place is safe for them, since the species categorization, they are categorized as farm animals. The photograph, therefore, inevitably evokes the question of power relations that are at stake in the various water crises that our planet currently faces. To paraphrase poet Stevie Smith, which bodies are waving and which bodies are drowning?